thanks for making it. I hope you had a very fascinating afternoon, full of transdisciplinary conversations. My name is Sarah van Belle from the Institute of Tropical Medicine, and I'm going to introduce to you the keynote that we have tonight. And this is Professor Dr. Bagele Chilisa. She is a professor of research methodologies at the University of Botswana, and she's also a post-colonial scholar of international renown. She has published numerous works and publications on indigenous research methodologies, and she has been awarded by the American prestigious National Institutes of Health Research. The talk will be moderated by Professor Benedetto Lepori, Professor of Comparative Research Policy at the University Svizzera Italiana in Lugano and Paris Est. Dr. Bagele Chilisa and Professor Lepori, you have the floor.
Thank you. So is the timing, where's the timing?
The timing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you stand between us and the reception, so I'm sure you will make it very extremely lively. We have just 1 hour of time, and we really give you all the time you need for your presentation, and
Okay.
then we have a round of questions.
Okay.
And,
Yeah. I prefer to have timer. Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, I will.
So, I have to put it on my chin. Good evening, Belgium. Good evening, Binot. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Let me say first and foremost, thank you for inviting me to this dialogue that we are going to have tonight. And I have interacted with some of you. We have talked about community of qualitative research methodologies. I have met people that say they've worked in Africa. I've met people that say they work with communities. And so my talk tonight is just so provocative. When I leave, you won't like me. But that's the whole intention, to provoke each other. Academics are known for that. I enjoy that a lot. So I'm going to be talking about how science can be inclusive, how research methodologies can be inclusive, and how now they are not inclusive. I'll talk about what the concerns are and say that even though there are concerns, we have some common understanding from which we can draw conversations that can drive the research methodologies. And I'm going to be a little bit bold and invite you to an indigenous science paradigm, an indigenous science research paradigm, and that's what I'm going to sell tonight, and actually say that we really have to work with multiple epistemologies, and those epistemologies, of course, are really informed by different ways of perceiving reality, knowledge, and values. So first of all, the question that we need to ask is whether the knowledge process espoused by mainstream methodologies, whether they are respectful and inclusive of all knowledge systems. and whether the philosophies that underpin the research approach, methods of collecting data, sources of evidence are inclusive. And to ask ourselves, are peoples of all worlds, 2/3 of the world, that is the first world, the second world, third, fourth, developed, developing, are they given equal rights through the research process to know, to name, to talk, and be heard? So I'm going to be wanting to see whether you can hear me. I know you are hearing, but can you hear me? And talk about challenges that arise in utilizing Western-based theory when research is carried among those who suffered colonial rule, slavery, and are continuously being marginalized by the current research paradigm. That is my claim. So I want first and foremost to say that we all agree that every research methodology is driven by some philosophy, and that these philosophies inform our worldviews, that is our ways of perceiving reality, ontology, our ways of perceiving values, and our ways of perceiving what counts as knowledge. And that all the methodologies that we use are actually embedded in one philosophy or another. And to say that every nation, every people has a philosophy, and that if those philosophies are not part of the philosophical foundation of methodologies, can we say we are inclusive? And I want to talk about what we call the paradigm wars. When I was a student at the University of Pittsburgh, there were what we called the quantitative, qualitative paradigm wars. At that time, the debate was whether qualitative research is really research. There was so much emphasis on it being subjective that it didn't count as science. Those were debates when I was a student at the University of Pittsburgh. But then the debate was always, okay, what are the philosophies that inform the interpretive paradigm? What are the philosophies that inform the quantitative paradigm? So people are talking about these philosophies, and I say to myself, one day when I get home, I'll also try to find out about African philosophies that can inform research. And so today, even American scholars are already problematizing research. And I always want to quote Shurush, who says, our current range of research epistemologies, positivism to postmodernism, post-structuralism, arise out of the social history and culture of the dominant race. These epistemologies reflect and reinforce that social history and the social group, and this has negative results for the people of color in general. So basically what we are saying is that the current academic research tradition exclude from knowledge production the knowledge systems of formerly colonized, the historically marginalized, oppressed groups that today are most often represented as the other. In post-colonial scholarship, we just refer to them as the other, and these are broad categories of third world, developing, underdeveloped, and so on. And we have these Malaysian sociologists who have talked about the concept of the captive mind. And this refers to uncritical imitation and use of Western theories, frameworks, models, and tools. And to say that when you talk of the biases, we are also talking about research theory that is driven by stereotypes about the core and the periphery. And there is this Blout theory, or the colonizer's model of the world. The colonizer's model of the world. How does the colonizer see the world? sometimes the world is seen in terms of the core and the periphery, where the core, is responsible for science, is progressive, and can engage in abstract thought, and the periphery, which is the other, is mainly there to imitate, is mainly there it can be irrational and emotional, and it's more concerned about concrete thought. And when you think about it, you'll see that this drives to the point where I had a conversation and I was a little bit like shaken when we're talking about indigenous communities, and we're talking about, okay, perhaps they also need to be involved in this dialogue on research methodologies. And somebody said, no, they just want to practice. No, they don't want to do. And then these are the stereotypes about the other. So the other can only produce concrete knowledge which are artifacts that the colonizer can use to theorize about the same other. So we are captive to the four research paradigms, which are the post-positivist, the interpretive, the transformative, and the pragmatic. And there's no need for me to go into detail of what each one of those is. And I've said, people talk about the colonized mind, but I've gone a little bit further to say, when you talk about a colonized mind, you can't really see. Maybe we can talk about mind bleaching. And this is when now you bring other people's ways of perceiving reality and values and knowledge, and you make it like it is a must. This is what every person has to use. These methodologies are supposed to be universal. And I'm saying there is a lot of damage in the mind. First, the damage on the colonized, who now think, okay, they don't have anything that they can contribute to the to the knowledge production. And it's also to the poor communities where this research is done in a language that they do not understand, a culture that does not actually reflect their culture. And we bring all of these best practices, we impose them on the community. There is a lot of damage that we do not see, but if we were to take this metaphor, you will realize how much the damage is. So for now, I invite you to look at this clip that I'm going to play, which is about demolishing a museum built during the colonial period and replacing it with a modern museum that communicates epistemological and ontological diversity. And I want you to imagine your research foundation and begin to say, what you have had stacks and stacks of literature, you've read and read and read, and what is there, do we need to renovate what we know? And so I'm going to play again? Yeah.
The Royal Museum of Central Africa. For decades, generations of young Belgians visited this museum, which claimed to lead them through a discovery of Congo-Kinshasa. For over a century, this museum was a totem to the glory of the civilizing work of King Leopold II. It stood as a palace of colonial memory frozen in time, a storehouse of souvenirs from a bygone era, where Belgium believed it was spreading civilization in Africa. A collective imagination developed around the museum, based on prejudices and cliches. In 2013, it closed its doors to begin the first major renovation in its history. More than a mere refurbishment of the building, the museum seeks to become the first colonial museum in the world to face its origins head-on. To do so would take a spiritual revolution and a redeployment of its collections so as to resonate with the big debates of today. Will it manage to demolish these deeply rooted subconscious stereotypes? Will it uncover the ghosts of Congo's past? Will it be able at last to break down the taboos and recount the darkest pages of Congo's history? A museum on Africa and on the history of colonialism, certainly. But for whom? For what reason? And how?
Available now.
Okay, and so we just have to imagine the knowledge that we have about the other, all the stereotypes, all the prejudices. It's time. It's time. Even museums are being renovated. And so it's also time for us to say, how do we bring the other into the research process? What can we do? And just to know that every research, for example, just giving an example, comes with a theoretical lens, and that you may not be aware of that theoretical lens because it has become normal. And I always give this example of the research during the COVID era, where some French doctors, medical doctors, were accused of racism after they suggested that a trial on whether tuberculosis vaccine would be effective against coronavirus should be conducted in Africa, because in Africa there is no treatment, no resuscitation, just a bit like we do research with prostitutes. So there are so many examples of that. And it's not deliberate, it's just some stereotypes, some prejudices that researchers may have that they are not always conscious of. And so, what we are talking about today, there is a decolonization wave. To decolonize methodologies, research, evaluation methodologies, to make science more inclusive. And what does decolonization mean? And I just quote this person who says, to decolonize the research methodologies is to argue that people must enter the world of scientific and scholarly analysis from the path of their historical and cultural developed perspectives. And these perspectives are not counter to universal truth, but imply that access of the universal through the window of one particular view. And so, why are we saying that? First of all, there is great literature to show that culture influences the way we perceive reality and knowledge and values. There is this book on the geography of thought. The book emphasizes the differences in culture, and in this case, it's between East Asia and Western Europe, and the other one is on the culture map, and still the differences in thinking and the differences in cultures between the North and East Asia. And all they are emphasizing is that, for example, you'll find that in East Asia, people think in terms of relationships, connectedness, circles, whereas the West they are more likely to be linear and to see things in categories. And in Africa, our way of thinking and our culture is more related to East Asia, where really the emphasis in how to do research that shows and values connectedness of people with each other and with the environment. And so, there is also this book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and it's all about cultural imperialism, how other people's cultures were marginalized, and how we are now talking back and saying, let's decolonize methodologies. And Smith's book, Smith is from New Zealand. This book on decolonizing methodologies is a must read. It's an important text that is revolutionizing the way people do research and how we can move the scholarship of research methodology forward by being inclusive and bringing new paradigms and new perspectives. So, well, we should be talking of equality of knowledge systems. We talk of equal rights, but what about equality of knowledge system? Where, for example, like the Sand Talk is a book by an indigenous scholar who says that indigenous knowledge is reduced into basic content, artifacts, resources, and hardly used to inform global sustainability issues, system thinking, global formulas, psychometrics, and equations, often counting for rigor in evaluation and research, always counting for rigor in evidence. And so there are also compelling books like this one, Evidence for Hope, which is saying that there's tension between the West and the South, and saying there is hope that indigenous worldviews can be a partner in tackling some of the world problems. So, as researchers, how can we go beyond techniques of gathering data and begin to question our values, our how we perceive reality, and what counts as knowledge? So, decolonizing methodologies, I like quoting this scholar from the US who says, and I'll just begin at the, we stand at the threshold of history marked by contested meanings and paradigm controversies, and that at some distance down this path, when its history is written, we will find that this has been an era of emancipation. Emancipation from hearing only the voices of Western Europe. Emancipation from seeing the world in one color. This is by Guba and Lincoln. These are the big research methodologies in the US. Every student has, almost every student has read their book. And this is what they're pushing. And this is what we are pushing. And thank you again for inviting me. And so the debate goes, I suggest that appreciating new paradigms, new to Western-oriented typologies, without subsuming them under the big four is possible, as well as learning across boundaries. And so we are there is a proposal for a fifth paradigm. And this scholar, an indigenous scholar, says, hey, we have tried to adapt dominant system research tools by including our perspectives into their views. We have tried to include our cultures, traditional protocols, and practices into the research process through adopting suitable methods. The problem with that is that we can never remove the tools from their underlying beliefs. the ways of perceiving reality, values, and what counts as knowledge. And so it is for this reason that we are proposing an indigenous science paradigm, that is research that is informed by assumptions, indigenous assumptions about the nature of reality, what counts as knowledge, the nature of values, and how these inform the research process. And just to emphasize, sometimes when you talk of indigenous, some scholars will say, okay, I don't do indigenous. I'm not going to be working with indigenous people. No, it is a thought, it is a science. And if I can learn Western science, surely we should be able to learn each other's science. And the evidence is that the science that is marginalized, it has a contribution to make to the world, and that is what we are pushing for. And so, this is the indigenous paradigm, inviting the other paradigm to a dance, to say, let's share, let's dialogue and see what we can borrow from each other. And in evaluation, and I have heard some people saying that they do evaluation in Africa. In evaluation, you know, we talk about the evaluation tree metaphor, and that has had 4 branches: the methods with emphasis on methods, the emphasis on use of results, the values, the social justice. But the indigenous paradigm is bringing in a branch. And this branch is the needs and context branch, where the emphasis is on context, on needs and aspirations of the people, so that even when you go with the best practices, better be sure whether that best practices is indeed reflective or is indeed addressing the needs of those people, instead of coming with solutions, looking for problems. Perhaps talk to the people and from bottom up come up with a project that addresses the needs and is suitable for context. And so, what are these indigenous research methodologies? We define them as methodologies that draw from indigenous knowledge, histories, language, worldviews, metaphors, philosophies, and experiences of the colonized, historically marginalized communities to critique, first of all, mainstream methodologies, decolonize by contextualizing and actually indigenizing methodologies, and also to envision other ways of doing research informed by indigenous philosophies, so that even when we teach our students, we should not only be emphasizing how they should learn about the focus group interview as defined by Guba Lincoln, but we should also be encouraging them to document methodologies and frameworks that emanate from their interaction with those indigenous people. So, are they qualitative? Yes, they can be qualitative. They fit with narratives or the constructivist paradigms. They're participatory, they're transformative, and they can be a subcategory of Western paradigm that utilizes qualitative approaches. Are they indigenous? Are they quantitative? Yes, they are quantitative. And there's this book on indigenous statistics, which is actually arguing that, hey, look, when you talk statistics, you are talking of constructs. And whose constructs? Whose constructs? Most of those constructs, of course, are Western constructs that do not always fit the description of the marginalized. So even statistics can be indigenized. And so, basically, what I've come up with, I've called a post-colonial indigenous paradigm. And a post-colonial indigenous paradigm is philosophical underpinning are there, and the emphasis on multiple constructed realities grounded in material, social, and spiritual context, and marked by the interconnectedness of the living and the non-living, and relational existence. This is a big contribution to how we can study science, research, how we can study, how we can do research. And of course, values that are respectful, and so on and so on. And these methodologies that are transformative. You can be talking of mixing indigenous science with qualitative and quantitative methods, and quantitative, and they're also transdisciplinary. So I always want to emphasize the issue of spirituality as an important contribution to research, by saying that most of the time when we talk of spirituality, sometimes we are talking of sorcery, witches, spirit, and kind of just marginalizing it. And we talk about, there's a conceptual framework on an Ubuntu spirituality. And Ubuntu is an African philosophy that emphasizes the relationship. It says, I am because we are. It emphasizes relations between people, among people, and a connectedness of the people with their environment. And so, that's when we now talk of environmental justice and all of that. Don't you think that the spirituality is an important aspect in research methodologies and our practice that we really need to pay attention to? We need to design tools that measure spirituality, to see the extent to which spirituality was a factor in an intervention that did not work. So, suppose you are doing evaluation and you can look at spirituality, relations between people, what we are saying is that you really have to, as an evaluator or as a researcher, you need to build relationship with the people. Not only build those relationships, but begin to say to yourself, what do I bring into to these people, and what do they have? Because it's not only about you giving or you knowing, it's about what they know and what you know. How do you bring that together? It's talking about place. If you are like you have been funded to put up a project, and this is a clinic in a certain village, place is an important factor. If the villagers say, we cannot put it in this place, in this space, because our people have a relationship with that particular place, it's a sacred place, you better listen, because your intervention might actually not work. And most cases when they don't work, we talk about superstitious Africans or superstitious indigenous people. They are not superstitious, it is their science. That is what we are saying, and the environment and so on. And so, yes, we talk of methods also. What are the methods? We have all of these methods that are in the books, and a lot of the methods that are indigenous are not there in the books. And here, we did some study where we asked 100 evaluators the types of tools and methods that they used in their evaluation research. And you'll see that in Africa, and you see that there is a variety of methods, and that the most important is indigenous language. So indigenous language, how is it a method? It's basically saying the constructs that you bring may not resonate with people's ways of perceiving that reality, and that language is therefore a very important factor in doing research. You see that there's also like community gatherings. You know how you talk about focus group interviews and how your students should go and do focus group interviews. in Africa, they don't talk about focus group interviews. They talk about community gathering. So you can see that in this survey, community gathering was high up there, not mention of focus group interviews. And you see that there are also methods like rituals. And rituals simple means when you talk of rigor, you also need to talk about how you actually entered into the space and how you interacted with people. If for those people there are certain taboos and certain rituals that you have to perform, you better do it because it has an effect on the type of data that you are going to gather. So you can see that there is a lot. But as I said, it's both qualitative and quantitative. So you can even see that even surveys came up as another way of doing research. African philosophy, African history, songs and metaphors and symbolism, art-based research are some of the methods. And so when we talk of training PhD students, we have to step back and maybe instead of being prescriptive about what they can do, build their skills to be able to document what they do and to have the confidence to bring out these methods so that they're part of the research menu. So ethics is a big issue in research, and it is research that is respectful when it benefits the participants. So the question is always, whose research is it? Is it researcher-centric that is serving the interests of the researchers? In Africa, people are very poor, and we are struggling to improve the quality of life of the people. So research should be about problem solving, and it's problem solving of the community's problems, not necessarily the researchers' just love for research or love for that particular topic. And a post-colonial ethical theory also recognizes power sharing within diversity as an integral part of fairness and social justice. And so these are the 4 principles of indigenous ethical principles. And just to say that, sometimes research, sometimes we take so much time about the methodologies, the designs, but sometimes we neglect the decisions that are made by the research community. And sometimes there is this debate about biobanking of human tissues. And if we're to step back and think about ontologies, ways of perceiving reality, and found that for Africans, for example, the body is a very important part of a human being, and you cannot cut one piece and bank it somewhere because it disconnects the person with the wholeness of being person. Perhaps would make better decisions. Perhaps would think and say, but what if biobanking doesn't work for some communities? Why should we continue to do that? And so, also issues of social justice. Issues of social justice are very important, especially in medical research, where they're always like inventing some vaccine or whatever it is. And so the story of the black farmer in the US is told, where the medical team did not disclose the retention of part of her tumor from cervical cancer, and subsequent activities with the cells for years generated $1 billion industry. And the family did not benefit. And of course, the person passed on. what type of research? Is there any social justice in that type of research? And so when you talk research and you talk social justice, we should move beyond the tools of how we collected data to how that research is benefiting the marginalized. And so we are calling for integration of knowledge systems and indigenizing the standardized, some of these standardized tools that we use, like the theory of planned behavior. You'll see your professor will say, oh, did you use a standardized instrument? Oh, go find a standardized instrument. Standardized by whose standards? Eh? So how do we contextualize those tools so that they're reflective of the context where the evaluation is, the research is done? For example, there's the Shona Symptom Questionnaire, which is an indigenous measure of common mental disorders developed in Zimbabwe. It was indigenized, and so it has some things about Shona cultures, perspectives and views and practices on mental disorders that you do not find in the standardized instrument. And so I bring to you an example saying that, yes, you can decolonize research methodologies by indigenizing it and by bringing together Western and indigenous research. And so this was a research on mitigating the impact of HIV/AIDS on adolescents in Botswana. And so this was collaborative research between the University of Pennsylvania and University of Botswana. And of course, the collaboration sometimes, people come, the West, they come with the designs, the theories, the frameworks, the models, the tools. They put them on the table and they say, let's go. And so, in this collaborative research, because we had to talk first of all to build relationships and be able to recognize that we come from different contexts and find out how we can how we can build relationships such that we are respectful of each other's world views. And so that is how we started. And so recognizing that the West has a lot of models, don't they? They have a lot of theories, don't they? Theory of planned behavior, theory of this, theory of that. And of course, the indigenous, the less developed, the developing, the formerly colonized, they have little to offer. And so, how do you work with people that have theories and you don't have theories? And so those are some of the things that we talked about, and the only thing that we could do was to make sure that even the theory of planned behavior is indigenized. And how did we do that? We started with what we call the elicitation phase, and in the elicitation phase, we had to use indigenous methods and other qualitative methods. And why did we do that? The theory of planned behavior, it also dictates how you should ask questions. You have a structure of how you should ask this question, and so on. And we okay, we'll try both. We tried both methods, and of course, with the structured interviews, the adolescents were not they didn't quite understand what is good about using condom. What is bad about using condom? Those are the type of questions that are asked under the theory of planned behavior. So, sorry. Sorry. And so we thought, hey, maybe there are other ways of eliciting information from adolescents. And so we decided to use the methods that are there, the language, what are the adolescents' language about condom use, about sex, about this, and what are the proverbs, what are the stories, what are the taboos, what are the rituals, and through that, we're able to combine what we got from mainstream qualitative research and from the indigenous methods to come up with rich information on sexuality and HIV/AIDS, and which we used to contextualize and decolonize the theory of planned behavior, be able to indigenize that standardized questionnaire so that it could reflect some of the new senses that we had. And so on the basis of that, we did not come with an intervention we refused to take an intervention that was done in the US on adolescents. And we said, look here, we are going to, first of all, design an intervention. So with all this information, we're able to design an intervention. We designed the intervention, and of course, the data was therefore used to design a survey questionnaire that was given to the adolescents, and also to design an intervention which would say, okay, if you want to change adolescent behavior to mitigate the impact of HIV/AIDS, what should the curriculum look like? And the data, the information come from those interviews. And of course, we went further to say, we are also as sophisticated as science can be. We are also quantitative, so we are going to use a randomized control trial to test the efficacy of the intervention, and that was done. And along with that, we did not want only to use the experiment, but we went further to combine evaluation methods such as dialogue, talking circles, yarning, participatory relation methods, to also find out from the participants what they felt and thought about the intervention. So in the end, this was a combination of indigenous and qualitative methods. And so in conclusion, I can say that indigenous research approaches invite us to problematize research and doing research as a significant site for the struggle between the interest and knowing of the West and the interest and knowing of the other. And to say, if we want to achieve inclusive science, we have to first of all ask ourselves, whose research is it? Is it researcher-centric, that is centered on the desires of the researcher, or is it from the communities? How can universities work with communities to conduct research that impact on the lives of the people without deciding for the communities what is impactful on their lives? Who will conduct it? What is the role of the people in the research that you do? And the research objectives, the methodologies that are used, and the benefit. Remember the story about the cancer where the beneficiaries, imagine somebody takes some piece from you and they make billions of money from it. And so, in conclusion, no knowledge left behind. Paradigms from Africa and the South have not received enough attention in the theoretical formulation of principles and policies that define the present and the future of our world. It is time that the ontologists, epistemologists, and axiologists of Africa and the global south contribute to concrete practice and theory in research. Research theory can benefit from multiple ontologies, epistemologies that are inclusive of knowledge system from Africa and the global science. Thank you. Okay, so these are some of the books.
So thank you, Bagele, for bringing so much fresh air in this evening, which is really appreciated. I would like to say three things shortly. The first one, I really like the non-antagonist way of framing, opening the dialogue, and I think we should be responsive. The second, that I'm mostly a sociologist of science, and it brought me to the basics. And the basics, even of Western, of our science, is about being critical, being innovative, is about being disruptive, and also being deeply aware of how science is entrenched in social life, from Thomas Kuhn onwards, how science is contingent, even our blessed theories or methods might not be anymore there in 20, 50 years. So it's something which resonates to some basics, and it's also that we are doing science within a society and as members of a social community, and not just as a privileged people doing for the sake of their honors. And I think the third point is, I think that's really a central mission for communities working on methods. Methods are walking between innovation and standards. So we create standards because we need to normalize, and standards are needed for legitimacy. You go to a journal and you need to teach your PhD students how to phrase correctly the methods, otherwise reviewer will say that's not possible. But we know that methods must be enablers of innovation, because if methods become just standards and stop innovation, there is no way out. There is no new research you can do. And this is an important task for us as methodologists and for training. So in a way, training methods is about saying which standards you must respect, how useful they are, but also fostering critical thinking about each time you employ a method, you should try to change something in the method. Maybe behind the scenes, maybe not so overtly, because reviewers will kill you. So it's really important that we keep a balance between these two dimensions of methods, standards and innovation. And I think really getting provocation, getting author culture, author views is absolutely essential, because it allows us to step out of our beloved ways of thinking constructed over years. So, and this means I want also to thank the organizers for giving us this provocation and not the end discourse about new methods. And I want to open the floor for questions. For sure you have many, many questions and comments or thoughts. Yes, I think there should be a micro here. And maybe we collect a few questions for sake of time, if it's okay for you.
Yes, thank you for your very compelling presentation. The message is a difficult one, so thank you for bringing it up. And my question is, because we do not engage in this dialogue, or most research does not engage in the dialogue with the other, but indeed we apply our framework and standardized model, do you think that the quality of the research overall is poor? And what do we gain in terms of quality of research from engaging with and dialoguing really with the other, so the subject of research instead of the object?
So thank you. Maybe we collect two or three.
Thank you very much. You make quite strong philosophical claims, and I wonder, well, I may be perhaps a bit too much embedded in Western thought, but I want your comment. For me, science is about the interplay of observation and reflection. So we observe, we reflect, we reobserve, etc. So in what way would you think in a different way, or could we agree on that? And related to this question on a more operational level, your example of a research design, I wouldn't do anything different from what you have presented.
Thank you. Benoit, and then we give you back the floor.
Yes, thank you so much, Bagele. My question follows up from that of my fellow colleague. So at the core of your presentation, you suggest this notion of a fifth paradigm, of a fifth, in addition to the four paradigms, right? And my challenge is, isn't it a better framing to ambition to, how should I say, upgrade or redefine or come up with a 2.0 version of the current paradigms? So in a way to indigenize the current paradigms instead of adding a separate one in a given way. Because for instance, when I see your excellent illustration of this sequential mixed method, very rich sequential mixed method design, right, on HIV/AIDS, I see this as a very rich, enriched mixed method design, and not necessarily, how should I say, in substance different. It's compatible with, it is simply enriched. It's a 2.0 design, if I may say so, within, which may absolutely fit or speak with the established epistemologies. So I find, at least personally.
So thank you. I think we have a further question.
Yes, just one question. There is an increasing popularity of what they call citizen science initiatives in Western science, where you would incorporate members of the public into your research who are maybe at least enthusiastic about the topic you research as a potential way of incorporating the beneficiaries of the science, the participants of the science, and etc. I think this is relatively new, or at least is getting a lot of attention right now in Western science. Do you have any thoughts on how it relates to what you would be arguing for? So this is becoming very popular in Western science. Do you think this is something similar to what you're arguing for, is to better engage with the potential beneficiaries and the participants of the science in indigenous societies? Do you see any relationships there and potential synergies?
I'm forgetting these questions.
Okay, so we reserve for
Let
you.
Me take this for and then...
Yes, we keep a slot for Sarah.
Okay. So, quality of research, how is this affecting when we don't contextualize research and involve and speak from the perspective of the research? How does it affect the quality of research? Of course, sometimes we don't want to say it loudly, because then you'll realize that most of the research that you have done about Africa, the people there, and so on, is actually invalid research. But we know it is because, for example, when we do evaluation research, you'll always say, okay, the findings, what are the findings? This is a very successful project. But on the ground, nothing has changed. What does that say about the quality of research? So, yes, when you don't bring these perspectives, people's perspectives into the research, it affects evidence, because you are defining evidence and rigor from a Western perspective. Yes, your research will count as valid, but on the surface, if it's about problem solving, you haven't solved any problem. And then the other question was observation. Okay, like, yes, research is research. So isn't it about observation? It's about observation, but it's about what you want to observe. What are you observing? If you are observing from an indigenous perspective, you'll probably not observe the same that you'll observe from a Western perspective. So it's also about what is missing in research in terms of what we are able to research. It's about bringing into the research those concepts, those practices that have not been brought to the table to count as research. For example, I talk a lot about evaluation. There's always this evaluation on mosquito nets and this philanthropic. They have brought money for mosquito nets. And then what happens? The people take the nets, the mosquito nets, to go and do fishing. But the research has been going on for a long time. Have you heard of any research that tried to say, but when they take the mosquito nets to do fishing, what happens? What do they use to prevent mosquitoes? They have the indigenous approaches. Has anybody ever researched on that one? Didn't you observe? Were you not observing? Didn't you see that they didn't use the mosquito nets? But why then didn't you say, okay, let's see. So, and then adding a paradigm. Yes, you see that diagram that I had about paradigms dancing, it's illustrated by that sequential mixed methods. It's saying we can borrow from each other. We can do things together. But sometimes I can do research from the perspective of an indigenous paradigm, just as much as you can do a quantitative survey from a post-positivist approach. You can also do some research with a research design from a purely indigenous paradigm. And engaging with the beneficiaries. Yeah, you are engaging with beneficiaries. Yes, in Europe you are engaging with beneficiaries, but the thing is what informs that engagement. So an indigenous paradigm says, you engage with us, but remember that for us, Ubuntu spirituality is part of us. It's part of our relational existence. And therefore, when you engage with us, you better take that into consideration. Thank you.
Sarah, you got that.
Thanks. It's about something that you said about, I haven't seen the slides, so I missed something maybe. But you said something about a modified theory of plant behavior. But what I had a lot of problems with teaching health policy at the Institute of Tropical Medicine, that I was continuously teaching US and UK public administration theories to African health professionals. But how can I, or can we build, support a sort of theorizing praxis, I'm saying praxis, I'm not saying theorizing praxis from your paradigm. So does that fit in that paradigm, the relational paradigm, theorizing from that perspective?
Okay, that's a difficult one. As I said, it's so difficult for us because the theories are not there. We are trying to build them. That is why I'm saying we should build the skills on our PhD students to be able to come up with those theories and to be able to claim a theoretical framework that is parallel to a theory of planned behavior and so on. And I think that is possible because theories are continuously being created. So it's time that we taught those PhD students, graduate students, to be able to theorize.
So thank you. Okay. The good news I take from this discussion is that you said nothing that is completely away from our culture. The bad news for us is that we are exposed to a huge pressure to forget about these basics and to learn our students how to make their careers instead of to research about reality. So I think we should be deeply aware of this because it's easy to think, but we know the environment we are. The miracle which took place today is that we are 10 minutes past and everybody is happy. So I want really to thank you for an astonishing and extraordinary presentation and invite you for a well-gained reception. Thank you.